The summer heat hung thick and heavy, even with the fire escape window flung wide, barely stirring the sheer curtains in their tiny Brooklyn apartment. Jake sat rigid at the kitchen table, his hands clamped around a coffee mug long gone cold. His thumb traced a frantic rhythm against the cheap wood grain. In the cramped galley kitchen, Maria chopped vegetables with a speed born of years in cramped city kitchens. "You're like a statue today, Jake," she said, her voice cutting through the tense quiet. She rinsed the knife, the water echoing in the small space, then set it down with a clatter. "Something's eating you." Her tone was light, but sharp. Jake hesitated, a knot tightening in his gut. His eyes flicked towards Lily, who stood by the stove, stirring a pot of something that smelled vaguely of burnt garlic. She hummed a tuneless melody, jarringly cheerful against the weight in Jake's chest. Her humming felt wrong, almost mocking, considering what he'd stumbled upon last night. "Just thinking," he mumbled finally, his voice rough. His gaze lingered on Lily, longer than he meant. She met his eyes, offering a quick, brittle smile. "You overthink everything, Jake," Maria chuckled, sliding a glass of iced tea across the table. "Sometimes you gotta stop thinking and start living." Jake managed a weak smile, but her words scraped against the raw nerve inside him. The truth he carried felt like a lead weight, pressing down, choking him. He swallowed it back. "Need help with anything, Lil?" Maria asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. Lily turned, her face smooth, almost too perfect. "Nope, got it," she replied, her voice calm, too calm. Jake's gaze dropped to her nails, painted a bright, aggressive red, the same shade she wore for her supposed girls' nights out. Last night's text message flashed in his mind, a cold wave of nausea washing over him. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Last night was unreal. The sender, Ricky, a punch to the gut. Jake's fists clenched under the table, nails digging into his palms. "Jake! Earth to Jake!" Maria's voice snapped him back. "You're miles away again. You okay?" He blinked, forcing himself out of the dark spiral. "Yeah, just distracted," he said, avoiding her eyes. "Well, don't let it ruin your appetite. Lily's been slaving away," Maria said, a hint of reproach in her voice. As if on cue, Jake's phone vibrated on the table, another message from Ricky. No subject line this time, just a casual, "Hey." His stomach twisted. "Who is it?" Lily asked, not turning from the stove. "Work stuff," Jake lied, locking the screen and shoving the phone deep into his pocket. "They really can't leave you alone, huh?" Maria sighed, shaking her head. Jake nodded vaguely, his mind racing. He couldn't keep ignoring the signs. The late-night texts, the hushed phone calls taken in the hallway, the unexplained absences. It all pointed to the truth he'd been desperately trying to deny. Last night, when Lily's phone had buzzed on the nightstand, his suspicion finally cracked. Ricky's message had confirmed his worst fears. "Lunch is ready," Lily announced, her voice slicing through his turmoil. She carried the steaming pot to the table, placing it down with practiced grace. Jake watched her, searching for a flicker of guilt, a twitch, anything. How could she be so composed? Did she feel nothing? As they ate, Maria and Lily chatted easily about weekend plans, school fundraisers, the relentless New York humidity. Jake remained silent, trapped in his own head. "You're barely touching your food," Maria observed, glancing at his untouched plate. Jake poked at his food with his fork. "Not hungry," he mumbled. Don't be ridiculous. You need your strength. Your family depends on you. Maria chided, her words hitting harder than she knew. Family. The word echoed hollowly in Jake's ears. Was this still a family? Lily met his gaze, her practiced smile faltering for the first time. Something wrong? She asked softly. Jake wrestled with the urge to explode, to rip the carefully constructed facade apart right there. But he stopped himself. I'm fine. Just tired, he replied, his voice flat. Maria chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. You're always so hard on yourself, Jake. No wonder you're worn out. Lily reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand. Her touch felt cold, alien. If there's something you need to say, you can tell me, she said gently. Jake pulled his hand back, pretending to adjust his watch. I said I'm fine. The rest of the meal crawled by in strained silence. Maria started clearing the dishes while Lily retreated to the living room with a fresh cup of coffee. Jake stayed behind, gripping the edge of the kitchen sink, staring out at the brick wall opposite their building. His mind was a whirlwind of anger and doubt. Jake, Maria said quietly, approaching him. Something's bothering you. I can tell. You want to talk about it? He turned to her, his expression guarded. It's nothing, Mom, he said, his tone final. She frowned, but didn't push. The afternoon dragged on. Jake paced the cramped living room, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. He reread Ricky's message over and over, each word fueling his rage. The apartment door creaked open and Lily stepped into the living room. Jake, she called softly. He turned, his face a mask. What is it? He asked curtly. She tilted her head, her faint smile unwavering. You've been avoiding me all day. If something's wrong, you can say it. For a moment, Jake teetered on the brink of confrontation, ready to unleash the torrent of emotions he'd been holding back. But he stopped himself. I'm just tired, he said shortly, turning away. Lily lingered for a moment before heading back to the bedroom, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. As the city lights began to flicker on, Jake remained in the living room, staring out into the urban twilight. A storm of emotions raged within him. Rage, sorrow, betrayal. He knew he couldn't stay silent forever, but the path ahead was shrouded in darkness. Confronting Lily meant detonating the fragile piece of their life. And then there was Ricky, his brother. How could he face him? The evening ended as it had begun, with unspoken truths hanging heavy in the air. The clinking of silverware echoed from the kitchen as they sat down for a strained dinner. Jake's fork hovered over his plate, his food untouched. The weight of what lay ahead loomed over him, a shadow he couldn't escape. Seated across from Jake, Lily burst into a sudden, brittle laugh at something Maria said about a neighbor's disastrous attempt at gardening on their fire escape. The sound grated on Jake, a jarring reminder of the illusion their life had become. You wouldn't believe it, Jake, Maria said, gesturing wildly as she recounted the story. The tomato plant just keeled over right onto the sidewalk. Mrs. Henderson nearly had a heart attack. Lily added with a soft giggle, delicately covering her mouth in a practiced gesture. Maybe the tomato plant was just staging a protest. Jake forced his lips into something resembling a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. The effort tightened his jaw. His thoughts were miles away, fixated on Ricky's message, his name burning in his mind. Undeniable proof. Betrayal. Not just from his wife, but from his own brother. Jake, are you even listening? Maria asked, her brow furrowing as she noticed his glazed look. He blinked, snapping back to the present. "Yeah, Mom, just thinking," he said, his voice strained and hollow. Maria's eyes narrowed, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "You've been doing a lot of that lately. Something bothering you?" "No," he replied quickly, his gaze darting to Lily. She tilted her head slightly, meeting his eyes with a neutral, unreadable expression. The meal stretched on, each bite of food tasteless to Jake. His anger simmered beneath the surface, thoughts spiraling into imagined confrontations. What would he say? How could he articulate the storm of emotions threatening to consume him? Finally, he set his fork down with deliberate clatter. "Lily," he said, his voice steady but laced with tension. "We need to talk, alone." The chatter at the table died abruptly. Maria glanced between them, worry flashing in her eyes. "Now?" Lily asked, her smile wavering slightly. "Yes, now," Jake insisted, holding her gaze. Lily hesitated, her fingers tightening subtly around her water glass. Then, with a composed calm that chilled Jake to the bone, she stood and smoothed down her dress. "All right," she said, following him down the narrow hallway to their bedroom. Jake closed the door behind them and leaned against it for a moment, bracing himself before turning to face her. "What's this about?" Lily asked, her arms folding defensively across her chest. Jake's throat felt parched. He searched for the right words, the words that wouldn't shatter everything, but there were none. Finally, he just blurted it out. "I know about you and Ricky." Her expression froze, just for a split second, her carefully constructed facade cracking as her eyes widened in genuine shock. But in the blink of an eye, she recovered, a smirk curling her lips. "Oh," she said with unsettling nonchalance, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "So you know. Is that all?" Jake's voice rose, raw with disbelief. "You're not even going to deny it?" Lily shrugged, her smirk deepening. "Why bother? You've already decided what you believe. So what now? Are you going to make a scene?" Her dismissiveness hit Jake like a physical blow. He stepped closer, his hands trembling. "Why, Lily? Why would you do this to us? To our family?" "Family," she echoed, her tone mocking as she tilted her head. "Maybe because you're boring, Jake. You go to work, you come home, you play with the kids, and then you sleep. Where's the excitement? Where's the passion?" Jake's jaw clenched. "Passion? You call betrayal passion? What about our vows, Lily? What about our children? Did none of that matter to you?" "Don't you dare bring the kids into this," she snapped, her voice sharp and defensive. "I've been a good mother to them." Jake let out a bitter laugh. "A good mother doesn't destroy her children's family for a fleeting thrill." Lily stood abruptly, her face inches from his, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand, do you? Ricky makes me feel alive. He's fun. He's spontaneous. Maybe you should take a lesson from him." Jake recoiled as if struck, his fists clenched at his sides, nails digging into his palms. "You're unbelievable," he whispered, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "And you're predictable," she shot back, brushing past him towards the door. Jake's voice cracked with emotion as he called after her. "Lily, this isn't over." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob, and turned to face him. "Oh, it is, Jake. You'll forgive me. Because that's what you do. You're too weak to do anything else." Without waiting for a response, she walked out, leaving him standing there, stunned. For a long while, Jake remained frozen, staring at the empty doorway. His chest felt tight, each breath shallow. He wanted to yell, to smash something, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. Instead, he sank onto the bed and buried his face in his hands. The apartment was oppressively quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. He could hear Maria and Lily's voices, calm and steady, as if nothing had happened. Hours slipped by as Jake sat alone, his thoughts racing. Confronting her hadn't brought relief. It had only deepened the void. Her smirk, her dismissive words replayed in his mind like a relentless loop. But as the night wore on, a cold resolve began to solidify within him. Lily might think she'd won, but she had no idea what was coming. Later that evening, Jake sat in the living room, his hands clasped tightly, as if holding himself together. The weight of Lily's betrayal pressed down on him, suffocating him. Seeking clarity, or even a shred of solace, he prepared himself for a difficult conversation. Maria entered the room, carrying a tray with 2 steaming mugs of tea. She set it down on the coffee table and sat across from him, her posture poised and calm. "You look like you haven't slept," she observed, sliding one of the mugs towards him. "I haven't," Jake admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. He stared at the tea, but didn't lift it. "Mom, I need to talk to you about Lily." Maria's eyes softened as she studied Jake's troubled face. "You're carrying something heavy," she said gently, her words seeking answers. "You've been so different lately." Jake let out a long breath, bracing himself. "She's been unfaithful," he admitted, his voice weighted with pain. Maria's hand hovered mid-motion, her cup forgotten. "What?" she said, her tone a blend of shock and sympathy. Jake's reply was sharp and bitter, as though the name itself burned his throat. "With Ricky," he barely managed to say it. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Maria's lips pressed into a thin line as her gaze wandered to the window, as if searching for clarity in the city lights. At last, she exhaled, her head shaking in slow disbelief. "Jake, hear me out," she began, her voice calm but resolute. Jake leaned closer, his eyes searching hers for condemnation or support. Instead, her tone took on a measured, almost authoritative quality. "Lily made a mistake." Jake's face twisted in disbelief. "A mistake?" he echoed, his voice low and trembling with anger. "Mom, she didn't just trip over her words. She slept with Ricky, your other son. How can you dismiss this as a mistake?" Maria's expression didn't waver. "Because one impulsive act doesn't define an entire relationship," she replied, her tone steady. "People falter, Jake. You've faltered, I've faltered, and now Lily has faltered. That doesn't mean you abandon everything." Jake's jaw tightened, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "This isn't a lapse in judgment, Mom," he said, his voice cold and firm. "It's a betrayal, deep and unforgivable." Maria sat back, her demeanor hardening. "Unforgivable?" she repeated, her voice tinged with exasperation. "Stop being so melodramatic. Do you have any idea how many marriages weather infidelity? Countless. You have children, Jake. Are you prepared to shatter their lives over this?" Jake's hands curled into fists on his lap. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Just forgive her and move on? Pretend it didn't happen?" "Yes," Maria replied without hesitation. "That's exactly what I'm saying. If you divorce Lily over this, don't expect my blessing. I won't stand by while you tear this family apart over something so small." Jake's voice rose, incredulous. "Small? Mom, she cheated on me with my own brother. How can you sit there and justify this? Maria's gaze grew colder. Because family comes first, Jake. Always. Lily is the mother of your children, and Ricky is your brother. You cannot let one terrible choice destroy this family. Jake stared at her, feeling the ground shift beneath him. You can't mean that, he said, his voice hollow. I mean every word, Maria said firmly, folding her arms. This family has endured too much already. I won't let you throw it away over something that can be mended. Before Jake could reply, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lily stepped into the room, her expression composed but tinged with a smugness that made Jake's blood boil. She leaned against the doorframe casually. Really, Jake? She said, her voice dripping with mockery. Involving your mother in our issues? That's low, even for you. Jake turned to her, barely containing his anger. You think I'm the problem here? He demanded. Lily smirked, her tone biting. Oh, I know you are, she said. If you'd paid half the attention Ricky does, we wouldn't be here. Jake's voice shook with rage. Attention? You have the audacity to lecture me about attention? Lily shrugged as she moved further into the room, her demeanor dismissive. I'm just stating facts. Ricky knows how to make a woman feel valued. Maybe you should take notes. Jake shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Leave, he said, his voice icy. Leave this room before I say something I can't take back. Lily tilted her head, feigning innocence. Oh, come on, Jake, don't be so dramatic. You're so predictable. It's honestly pathetic. Jake's voice cracked, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Pathetic? Predictable? You call faithfulness and raising a family pathetic? Maria stepped between them, her voice sharp and commanding. Enough, both of you. This isn't solving anything. Jake pointed an accusing finger at Lily, his voice heavy with emotion. You've destroyed everything, he said. Turning to Maria, his voice trembled with frustration. And you're enabling her. How can you defend this? Maria's gaze was firm. Because I know what's at stake, she said. Your children need stability. If you leave Lily, they'll bear the brunt of the fallout. Jake's voice was resolute. They'll suffer more living in a house built on lies. Lily laughed bitterly. Oh, please. Staying together is the best thing you can do for them. Do you think they'll thank you for tearing their family apart? Jake's breath was unsteady, his fury barely contained. Don't lecture me about what's best for my children, he said coldly. You lost the right to speak on that the moment you betrayed me. Maria placed a hand on his arm, her voice softening. Jake, please, don't let your pride destroy what we've built. Jake's tone was quiet but unwavering. This isn't about pride, Mom. It's about dignity. Something you seem to have forgotten, Lily scoffed, crossing her arms. Dignity? You're so obsessed with your own ego that you can't see the bigger picture. Jake stared at her, his resolve solidifying. You're right about one thing, Lily. People make mistakes. Mine was trusting you. Without another word, he turned and walked out, ignoring Maria's calls after him. His footsteps echoed in the hallway, followed by the slam of the apartment door. Outside, the cool night air enveloped him as he stood on the stoop, staring into the quiet street. The words of his mother and Lily replayed in his mind. Family, stability, forgiveness, twisted and warped to excuse the inexcusable. Jake knew one thing for certain. Staying was no longer an option. The first hint of dawn crept through the blinds as Jake sat on the edge of his bed, fingers tangled in his hair, his thoughts a chaotic jumble. His gaze was fixed on the door leading to his children's room. Inside, Maya and Leo slept peacefully, their quiet breaths a poignant reminder of the innocence he was desperate to protect. The apartment was silent, but Jake's mind was anything but calm. The sting of Lily's betrayal and Maria's ultimatum churned within him like an unrelenting storm. His eyes drifted to the duffel bag he'd packed during a sleepless night, standing ready by the door. His decision was final. Moving carefully, he approached the children's room and pushed the door open with painstaking care. Maya was curled up beneath her pink blanket, clutching her worn teddy bear, while Leo lay sprawled on his back, his small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Jake's heart clenched as he leaned against the doorframe. "This is for you," he whispered, the words barely audible. "I'll make sure you're safe from all this." The bedside clock blinked 6:30 a.m. Jake knew he had a brief window before Maria and Lily, both early risers, would leave for their planned brunch. Timing was everything. Moving with purpose, he prepared a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast. The soft shuffle of footsteps behind him broke the quiet. "Daddy?" Maya's sleepy voice. She stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair adorably messy. "Good morning, sweetheart," Jake said, crouching to her level. "How about some breakfast? Afterward, we're going on a little adventure." "Adventure?" she asked, her eyes lighting up despite her grogginess. Jake smiled, tapping her nose gently. "Just you, me, and Leo. A special day for the three of us." By 8:30 a.m., Maria and Lily had left the apartment. Jake wasted no time. He guided the children back to their room, encouraging them to pack a few favorite toys and clothes into small backpacks. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, cramming action figures into his bag. "Not far," Jake assured him, zipping up his own duffel bag. "Just someplace new, someplace safe." Maya hesitated, her brow furrowing. "Is Mommy coming?" Jake knelt in front of her, his expression soft but firm. "Not this time, honey. This is just for us." Once everything was packed, Jake carried their bags to the car. He took a final walk through the apartment, his eyes lingering on the framed family photo on the wall. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look back as he turned off the lights and locked the door behind him. The drive to their new place, a small apartment in Queens, was subdued. The children, sensing their father's tension, remained quiet, watching the city blur past their windows. Eventually, Leo broke the silence. "Where are we going, Daddy?" "To a place where we can all be happy," Jake said, forcing a smile. The apartment was small but clean, with 2 modest bedrooms and a cozy living room. Jake had arranged everything days earlier, paying up front to avoid complications. The children explored their new surroundings with cautious curiosity. "Can we put our toys here?" Maya asked, pointing to a corner of the living room. "Of course," Jake said, kneeling to help her unpack. "This is our home now." For the rest of the morning, Jake kept busy. He laid out the children's bedding, organized their toys, and stocked the kitchen with essentials. By midday, his phone buzzed on the counter. The caller ID read Mom. He hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Jake?" Maria's voice was sharp with concern. "Where are you? What's going on?" "I'm not coming back," Jake said, his voice steady but unyielding. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "Lily just called me. The apartment is empty, and the kids are gone. Have you lost your mind?" "I'm doing what's best for my children," Jake replied firmly. "They deserve better than what we had in that apartment." Maria's tone turned icy. "You're being selfish. Do you have any idea what this will do to them? To Lily? To me?" I know exactly what it will do, Jake said, unshaken. And I've already made my choice. You're making a huge mistake, Jake, Maria hissed. You'll regret this. Mark my words. I've already made enough mistakes, Jake said, ending the call. He set the phone face down on the counter and silenced it. The afternoon passed peacefully. Jake played board games with the children and read them stories, trying to keep the weight of his decision from showing. For the first time in weeks, he felt a semblance of control. But as they sat down to dinner, the phone vibrated again. This time, the number was unfamiliar. Against his better judgment, he answered. Hello? He said cautiously. Is this Jake? A woman's voice asked, her tone professional but urgent. Yes, this is Jake. This is Nurse Avery from St. Vincent's Hospital. The voice continued. Your mother and wife are here in the emergency room. There's been an accident. You need to come immediately. Jake's stomach dropped. What happened? I can't discuss details over the phone, the nurse said gently, but I strongly recommend you come as soon as possible. Jake froze, his mind racing. His eyes darted to Maya and Leo, who were giggling over a spilled juice box, blissfully unaware. I'll be there soon, he said finally, ending the call. He stood motionless in the living room, the weight of reality pressing down on him. The chaos he'd tried so hard to leave behind had found him again. Questions swirled. What kind of accident? How serious? Did he even want to know? Daddy? Maya's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Are you okay? Jake knelt to her level, forcing a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. I just need to step out for a little while. Rodriguez from next door will come stay with you, okay? Maya gave a subtle nod, her face tight with unease. You'll be back, right? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. Always, he assured her. But as he grabbed his keys and stepped outside, an unsettling sense of dread settled in his chest. He knew that whatever awaited him at the hospital would once again shatter his fragile peace. The moment Jake entered the hospital, his heartbeat hammered in his ears. The sterile smell of antiseptic assaulted his senses as he rushed past the reception desk, only vaguely registering the nurse's directions to the waiting area. His eyes immediately landed on Maria and Lily. Maria paced back and forth, her face ashen and etched with worry. Lily sat hunched over in a chair, nervously twisting a crumpled tissue in her trembling hands. As soon as Maria spotted him, she hurried toward him. Jake, she said, gripping his arm with urgency. Thank God you're here. He pulled away from her grasp, his expression hard. What happened? Maria's lip quivered, tears welling in her eyes. It's Ricky, she managed to say, her voice breaking. He was in an accident. A terrible one. Jake's jaw tightened, though his expression remained unreadable. What kind of accident? Maria hesitated, glancing toward Lily, who looked equally distraught. Finally, Lily stood, her face streaked with tears. She took a small step forward, her voice shaky as she explained. We were coming back from the Hamptons. The car... It lost control. They think it was a blowout. Jake's stomach churned, though his face remained impassive. Is he alive? Maria nodded quickly, dabbing her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. Yes, but he's barely holding on. He's in surgery now. Crossing his arms, Jake looked between them. And why is this my problem? Jake, please, Lily implored, reaching out for his hand. He stepped back, leaving her grasping at air. We need you. Ricky needs us. We've all made mistakes, but we're still family. Family? Jake's bitter laugh echoed through the room, drawing a sharp glance from a passing nurse. Now you want to use that word? Lily winced, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I know we hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. But this is bigger than all of that. We have to stick together. Stick together? Jake's voice rose, incredulous. Do you even hear yourself? You destroyed this family with your lies, and now you want me to act like none of it happened? Maria stepped closer, placing a cautious hand on his shoulder. Jake, I know you're angry, she said softly, but this isn't the time to hold on to grudges. Ricky's life is hanging by a thread. Jake's eyes flashed with anger as he turned to face her. Don't lecture me about family, he snapped. You stood by and let all of this happen, and now you want me to be the good son? I'm done. Maria's face crumpled, but before she could respond, Lily fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I messed up, Jake. I was selfish and I ruined everything. But please, don't abandon us now. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Jake looked down at her, his face unmoved. Anything? He asked, with a sharp edge to his voice. Like, stop lying? Like, taking responsibility for what you've done? Forgive me if I'm skeptical. Lily clutched at his leg, desperation clear in her eyes. Please, she whispered, don't let us fall apart. Jake stepped back, leaving her hands to fall away. His gaze shifted between Maria and Lily, his expression resolute. You want me to forgive and forget? Not happening. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Lily's muffled sobs. Maria stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. Jake let out a sharp breath and turned toward the hallway leading to the surgical wing. Where is he? He asked, his tone flat. The ICU waiting room, Maria said, pointing shakily. They'll let us know when he's out of surgery. Without another word, Jake walked away. The ICU waiting room was cold and quiet, the steady hum of fluorescent lights filling the sterile space. Jake sat in a corner, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the tiled floor. He hadn't come for Ricky. Not really. He wasn't even sure why he'd come at all. His thoughts wandered to his children, safe in their new apartment. They were the only thing anchoring him in this chaos. The door creaked open, and Maria entered hesitantly. She sat down beside him, leaving a small distance between them. Jake, she began quietly. Don't, he interrupted. She sighed, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. I know I failed you, she admitted. I should have stood by you when it mattered most. I made mistakes. But Ricky, he's still your brother. Jake's expression was unreadable as he looked at her. And what's that supposed to mean to me now? It means there's still a chance to repair things, Maria said, her voice breaking. For all of us. He shook his head, a grim smile tugging at his lips. You don't get it, Mom. Some things are beyond fixing. Some bridges are burned for good. Before she could respond, the door opened again, and a doctor stepped inside. Tall and weary, his scrubs bore dark stains. Family of Ricky Blake? He asked. Both Jake and Maria stood. How is he? Maria asked anxiously. The doctor removed his cap with a sigh. He's stable for now, but he's critical. The next 24 hours will be pivotal. Maria clasped her hands together, murmuring a prayer under her breath. Jake remained silent, his expression inscrutable. Can we see him? Maria asked. One at a time, the doctor replied. Maria turned to Jake. Do you want to go first? No, Jake said curtly. You go. As Maria followed the doctor down the hallway, Jake sank back into his seat. His thoughts churned, but he couldn't pin down what he felt. Anger, regret, or maybe nothing at all. The weight of the past and present bore down on him, leaving him unsure of what might come next. An indescribable void churned within him, a storm of emotions he couldn't quite name. When Maria returned, her face streaked with tears, she whispered, barely audible, "He's asking for you." Jake hesitated, standing only after a moment of inner conflict. Whether driven by morbid curiosity or the need for some twisted sense of closure, he couldn't be sure. The sterile hum of machines filled the hospital room where Ricky lay, his fragile frame almost swallowed by the bed. His skin was pallid, his eyelids drooping as if every blink cost him immense effort. "Jake?" he croaked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Jake stood at the foot of the bed, arms folded tightly across his chest. "Ricky," he said flatly. "I'm sorry," Ricky said, his words breaking under their own weight. "I've made such a mess. I hurt you." "Stop it," Jake interrupted, his tone sharp. "Don't waste your strength on apologies. We both know that sorry changes nothing." Tears began to fill Ricky's eyes. "I just wanted to fix things," he murmured, his voice trembling. Jake's jaw tightened as he shook his head. "You made your choices, Ricky. Now you've got to live with them." A single tear traced its way down Ricky's face as Jake turned on his heel, leaving the room without a backward glance. When he reached the waiting area, Maria and Lily looked up at him, their faces expectant, silently pleading for some sign of hope. "Well?" Lily ventured cautiously. Jake's face remained unreadable. "I said everything I needed to say," he replied, without offering further explanation. He strode out of the hospital, his steps resolute, the past firmly left behind for Maria and Lily.